Life is a constant series of lessons, and you think you know everything there is to know about a topic. That's when you start really screwing up. Hi there. My name is Charles Ray Dawson. I'm the Associate Broker Residential Sales Manager at ProStar Realty. This is the Unnamed Real Estate Podcast, episode 218. And how are you guys doing out there, all my personal therapists? So, in case you guys haven't noticed yet, a lot of this podcast, the value I get out of it is that I can articulate and say out loud the things that I keep bottled up inside. Some of you guys might have noticed that, especially when the hands start moving and I get a little ranty. Yeah, that's part of that. So, as you can see with the intro and the topic of today, we're going to be discussing learning and learning curves. All right. I know at least one of my audience just suddenly ears just perked up because this is definitely her jam. Let's go through the numbers. Let's talk about real estate for a bit, and then we'll kick off on the rant. So for those of you who stay for the rants, okay, you have to choke down the numbers. You can't, how can you have any pudding if you don't eat your meat kind of stuff, right? News-wise, interest rates, gotta love them. Seriously being impacted by everything else on the market. Do not look at your 401k. Just don't, all right? The market's doing things that are way outside of the scope of this channel. Way outside of the scope of pretty much anybody you're listening to who's talking about these markets, right? And that includes some very, very smart people. And we got a lot of competing theories of reality going on right now. So taking, markets get all scalumpus, that means the bond markets get all scalumpus, right? And now that the bond markets are all scalumpus, that means our lending rates are all scalumpus. So for the people who closed in the last 2 weeks, congratulations. You bought the dip, all right? And you should, when you locked in your rates, you should have gotten a pretty good little, hey, yeah, that's a decent rate by today's standards. All right. For those of you who were floating a loan, all right, and remember, floating a loan is where your lender says, let's see until it gets to the point where I'm going to hit stop and we're going to lock that in. Well, if you were looking on last Friday, going, hey, wow, rates are coming down, let's float it into next week. And then suddenly 2 market days later on Tuesday, well, you just jumped back up. All right. Why is this? Well, it's because of the tariff kind of routines. And it's a lot about how foreign trade actually drives our bond markets. All right. Because, hear me out, this is sort of fun. All right. If you want to purchase something from America, you have to pay for it in dollars, not in whatever your local currency is, all right? And if you want to buy oil anywhere in the world, you have to do it in dollars, right? But a lot of ways people get dollars and hold on to dollars and get rid of dollars is if they put them into treasury bonds, their spare dollars into treasury bonds, and they turn around and sell those things, all right, when they need the spare cash. Now, if they have a decent trade balance with the U.S., meaning by definition of most of the world, a decent trade balance with the United States means that the United States is giving you more money than you're giving them. You take that excess money and you put it into the bond market, right? And this does a couple things. When you put it into the bond market, because more people are looking for bonds, the price of bonds go up, all right? And because of the way they calculate the interest rates on bonds, that means the return, the interest on bonds, goes down. So as more American dollars come back into our bonds market, and it pushes down the rate on bonds by increasing the price of bonds, this means that the interest rates for real estate do the same thing. So if we suddenly are not trading with other countries because of trade wars and stuff like that, well, there are less U.S. dollars going out from the U.S. to a foreign country and then getting returned back buying U.S. Treasury bonds. So whenever you hear those things out there as China's holding a lot of our debt, this is the kind of stuff we're talking about, all right? So that being said, the bond markets got really skittish, all right? And that lowered the price of U.S. bonds, right? Because people were trying to sell them to get cash to offset their other purchases that they want to make from the United States, which raised the rates on the 10-year. And of course, that means that our interest rates for real estate went up afterwards. So, and we're going to be doing this for a while. Stand by to stand by. All right. So, other things going on in the national news. Still trying to figure out what the Department of Justice is trying to get us to do with clear cooperation. They're still trying to make it where if the realtor associations, through the use of multiple listing services, are providing a service to their agents, saying that we can all share each other's listings. As part of that, that means that you have to have clear cooperation with the other side, and because of these individual brokerages read very large, very corporate behemoth brokerages saying, I don't want to share. No, my listings are my listings, and I just want to share them with my agents, and I shouldn't be forced to work with other real estate brokerages out there. And convincing a couple attorneys in D.C., possibly, let's make it rain in D.C. I would never, ever suggest that bureaucrats are ever bribed by corporations. Not straight up front. That never happens. What happens is that after you retire, you get yourself a really nice job with Bank of America for a while. Just double pad your retirement account. All right. For all that, the great experience that bank has had with you, Mrs. Bureaucrat, sitting there in D.C. You have been such a joy to work with for the last 25 years. It's like everything we asked of you, you just put out like a $2 whore. So why don't you bring you on board, and you can share some of that experience in this lovely office that we're going to set up for you. Oh yeah, by the way, we're a work from home state. You don't actually have to come in ever, but you'll get your paycheck. All right. I'm not saying that this actually happens in the federal government, but there is a reason why every time the Reynolds bill gets forwarded around the halls of D.C. by some wet behind the ears congressperson. And remember, the Reynolds bill concept is if you work for the federal government, you are not allowed to work for any company you directly regulated. All right. For a certain amount of time after you retire or quit working for the federal government, just to make sure, admirals don't suddenly wind up for working for U.S. Electric Boat, or Air Force generals don't suddenly wind up with cushy jobs at Boeing after they signed off on a very large, very expensive, very non-flying and/or fuel-pumping aerial refueler. Just to sort of make sure those things don't happen. All right. That gets shut down really, really quick. Okay. End of this editorial rant. I'm sorry. I didn't even expect on going there today. All right. But, it's, numbers. Okay, so we're on national news. We just came back through that. We're going to talk cortisol levels here in a bit. Yeah, and let's talk more local. I got builders blowing up my phone right now trying to sell their spec build homes. Now remember, a spec home is a house that the builder builds on speculation, thinking that when the house is completed, a buyer will suddenly appear and take that off their hands in a quick enough time. Right? They prefer to have you walk onto the floor, put $10,000 up front, sign for your lot, and have them build a home, right, that they then eventually deliver to you. That's the way they would prefer it, because they know they're not going to wind up having to hold on to the house. But the spec home is what builders do when they're feeling pretty froggy about the market. And if they're feeling froggy about the market, they're feeling good things. Hey, let's start building extra homes, right? Instead of sitting here and keeping our supply lines and our employees idle, waiting for the next house order to come in. We got 150 lots here to build out on. We got we got 5 different floor plans on this. Let's do a couple tranches. We'll do 3 tranches of, 1, 2, and 3. We'll start selling 1. Okay, let's see how far we can order on that. Okay, now let's start going into 2. And by the time they hit, the 3rd tranche of homes, they know how their plans are selling. They know how things are going on. So they might just fill all of them up and then try to sell them on the back end. All right. Back before the crash, back in 06 or 07, you didn't have to build anything on spec because you had lines out in front of the door, before you even broke down. I mean, you throw a pop-up tent out there saying now placing, pick your floor plan, pick your lot. Okay, which one you want. hand your money to these people. And people were getting in line the night before and camping out like it was rock concert tickets or anything. So it's not how we have things going on right now. This is not the new normal. All right. But when builders are blowing up my phone, all right, going, hey, here are our new spec homes that we have. They're literally going, and I just get a wall of text, you know, and it's really interesting. I can tell the ones that are just pulling my name off the interwebs and which ones are actually I've registered a client with or something like that. And this is not just like that general, hey, to whom it may concern. This is really specific. Charles, you know, if your buyers are still interested, we have these houses for sale. And that's really, really rare because, you know, builders really don't want to deal with a real estate agent. What builders want is for you to wander in unaware onto their lot, look at their floor plans, pick that one, sign the piece of paper, hand them $10,000. They don't want an agent coming in there with nasty things like negotiating for you, understanding the different packages and how you can negotiate those in or out, how you can negotiate the interest rate that they're offering, all those other glorious things. And then at the end of the day, builders winding up having to pay the real estate agent. Traditionally, now they want the buyers to do that. But, it's always a sign of the health of the market is when the builders start marketing to you directly. And that's what's happening right now. So, are these honest-to-God houses that the builders built on spec, like they're declaring them? Or are these contracts that have canceled out because the buyer no longer wants to complete the purchase of that property? And it's really bad when they're willing to give up $10,000 instead of paying that, completing that contract. Data point to stick in your head. Remember, tariffs, we discussed this a couple weeks ago. Most of the builders here in town have already pre-sourced all of their product that they're going to use to build these houses. So any tariff argument kerfluffles that we see right now aren't going to have that much of an impact on our building. Immigration's a completely different side of the house. All right. Find it really ironic that the other day a person came up to me and was shocked and traumatized that the wife of one of his contractors had been picked up by ICE. And I'm like, yeah, they got picked up by ICE. They weren't here legal. And going on about, well, this and that and the other thing. And they have kids in school and they own houses and they have this and they have that. And they're running their own business. I'm like, yeah. What do you think deporting the illegals actually meant? It wasn't just the ones that you didn't like. Just saying. All right. So that's going to have an impact on that. It's like, hey, guess what? I already hear that I'm already seeing builders desperately trying to hire more employees, right? Possibly not because of any potential building plans that they have in place. Like, oh my God, we need to figure out how to build 500 new units this year. That means we need, 1,000 new employees, right? How's that going to work out for everybody? So that's that. Still having national argument on where we're going with all of that. Locally, yes, sooner or later, and God, you just heard it here first, people. Sooner or later, one of the news organizations or the Arizona Republic is going to start talking about how foreclosures are going up. All right, two things. One, it's not foreclosures that are going up. All right, it's pre-foreclosure or recording of trustees. I can't remember the term right now, but the little form that your bank files with the court saying we're getting ready to foreclose on this guy. This is everybody's official notice, and we're recording this to state that yes, the borrower has indeed been informed they're late. All right, and that starts a 90-day process. It has gone up 50% over this time last year. Year over year, we're up 50%. That also means that we're actually somewhere from, like last year we were at 75, okay, and now we're at 125 per day, okay. We're still very, very low compared to pre-COVID times, all right. And most of these foreclosures are not going to wind up going to the bank itself. They're going to be a pre-foreclosure sale. They're going to be a short sale. The owners are going to sell those things, all right, or whatever. Okay, and I think I ran the numbers yesterday, and it was like something like 120 or so listed in the MLS. And there's a lot of people who are just in denial. Remember, some of these foreclosures is simply that mom and dad are dead. All right, the homeowner's dead. All right, kids can't be bothered, so they're just going to let the bank have that. So, or something we're going to see more and more is that there will be no dependents whatsoever to take over the estate, and then it'll just revert back to the state at that point. But the bank does get first call on it. All right, and with the bank having first call on it, well, the bank's going to pick that sucker up. All right, or not. We'll see how that goes. So let's talk finally real quick on the numbers, right? So our numbers that we are looking at today are for April 10th, 2025. Our actives this week are 25,330. That is up 346 from last week. We actually broke the 25,000 mark the day I recorded, because I looked it up in the middle of the class, all right? Remember, I run these numbers on Wednesday, right? So, but this was Wednesday, about 8:55 yesterday morning, all right? So we have broken the 25,000 mark, which I've always said is the balanced where we should always be. All right. Of that, we had 2,887 new listings, up 210 from the week before. We are still trending up on actives coming on a little bit more every week. All right, contracts are at 2,661, which was down 106, disturbing, for closings of 1,409 last week. Remember, first week of the month is always slow. Coming soon to an MLS near you is 881 new listings. All right, our supply right now is showing at 102.5, so we have 102 houses where normally we would have 100. All right, our demand is at 81.8, still trending up, all right, but not as fast as supply right now, giving us a Crawford report number of 79.1. All right, so our regional areas that we are looking at and everything is indeed... There's Chandler, still leaving the top of the pack, still dropping slowly, okay? But they're at 138.9. Our next one's down there, drops all the way down, a 20-point difference to Avondale, 118.9. Paradise Valley, 118.5. Don't care, they're rich people. Scottsdale, 117.1. You know, still sort of care because they only think they're rich. Okay, and then we're looking at Gilbert, Fountain Hills, and Phoenix, and Glendale rounding up our sellers markets. Glendale crawled up out of the balanced market, so they are still trending upwards. That's good for them. Tempe has fallen. Tempe is back down into a balanced market, right down negative 13% month over month. They are a big loser, but they're Tempe. They are all over the place down there. All right. And then we're also looking at Mesa and Cave Creek, okay, as our balance market. And then we're into the doldrums, right? Peoria has dropped 7% month over month. Okay, so they are now down into a seller's or a buyer's market. From last month, they're at 87. All right. And rounding out the absolute bottom is Maricopa and Buckeye. Maricopa at 49.6, still creeping up just a little bit week over week. Will they even break the 50 mark, or will Buckeye, okay, dropping at the same rate Maricopa is going up? This is my little internal race. Maricopa has 0.4 points to grow to hit 50. Buckeye has 0.5, a half a point to fall to hit 50. Where will these two areas cross over? All right. So regardless, if you are a buyer and you're looking to buy and be in a place for anywhere between 5 and 7 years, those are the two neighborhoods I would look into, and I would go in there with a big buyer energy and swing your big buyer stick around and get yourself a house. Those are your two areas, especially for first-time home buyers who can work from home. Seriously, people. All right. This is a great spring to be a first-time home buyer. This is probably the best spring to be a first-time home buyer I've seen since COVID. Since before COVID. Almost since forever. I mean, seriously, except for the interest rates, right, and the price values and everything you qualify for a loan that puts you in the price tag to start buying. Those are your neighborhoods. This is a good time. All right. Got some little bit more caffeine in me. Let's get a little bit more nicotine in me. Let's talk about the learning curve. This has been the theme for this week. All right. Fun story. And I can say this because none of my agents and my broker don't pay attention to this podcast, even though I've told them a million times. One of my agents asks the broker a couple weeks ago, off the cuff question. He's talking to him about something, goes, "Hey, do we have training today?" And it's like, yes, we always have training on Thursdays from 2 to 4. Everybody knows this. This is announced at every sales meeting and has gone out a billion times, right? So in people's minds, they know Thursday is our training day. But this agent also is really busy. So when he asks a question like, "Hey, do we have this today? Hey, da-da-da-da-da." What he's really asking is, what day is it? Is it Thursday? Is it Friday? Is it Tuesday? Is it Sunday? I mean, there's not a lot of traffic on the streets, da-da-da-da. All the church parking lots are full up, those kind of stuff. So my broker interpreted that nobody knows about the training. So he comes and goes, why doesn't he know about this? I'm like, he knows. He just didn't know what day it was. Huh? Why didn't he know what day? No, he literally didn't know what day it was. Anyways, so now we are sending out an email on Tuesdays saying, remember, kids, between 2 and 4 is our training / mastermind class. All right. If anybody wants to come in and cover the new stuff, hosted by Ray. All right. And after this announcement, only one person showed up. And ironically, it was the one who asked what day it was. All right. And so we broke out the bourbon, and we sat there and told war stories and whined and stiveled on each other's shoulders. All right. But so the next day I go into Steve, the broker, and I go, "Steve, same attendance as always on these training. And oh, by the way, we have agents who are doing things, and they're the ones who are going out of the way not to come in for training, and they are making mistakes. Fortunately, these mistakes are being caught by your awesome command staff. Read your residential sales manager and your office manager. And we are getting these corrected before, 1, an agent has a commissionectomy, and 2, we have the people versus this real estate company suddenly, get served us at the office. All right. Not being too hyperbolic when I say these things, people. So, Steve, how are we going to get these agents to pay attention to their training? How are you just letting them come in and you're releasing them into the wild? How do we get them in such a way where they are literally coming in here and sitting down, not doing whatever? All right. And more importantly, how do we do this in the limited amount of time Ray has to allocate to training to these agents on top of everything else he had me doing? So, and he said, well, we'll make them do this. We'll make them do this. We'll make them do this. I'm like, okay, fine. What's the stick? What happens if they don't? What happens if your employees fail to complete the training that you have declared as mandatory? All right. Now, when I was training NCO for a Marine Corps LAV company, all right, it allowed me to walk around with a clipboard. Okay, and as I walked around with that clipboard, 1, I looked busy because I was part of the OG E4 Mafia, okay, and that was, a great way to keep people from telling you to find something to do if you look like you're already doing something, all right, but, part of my job was to sit there, look at all the training requirements for the different MOSs and the different ranks and which classes should you have taken by that point. Right, and help develop a lesson plan for them. And it was really easy because all the training itself was already done in these big red MCI books, Marine Corps Institute. All right, and you just sit there and go, hey, here's your package. And I'll walk over and you go, hey, here's your package. And then I talked to platoon sergeant and I say, hey, I just gave Lance Corporal Smuckatelli his Marine Corps Rifleman package. Right, he has 90 days from today to complete that. And if they end in 90 days, I would go up Hey, I'm not seeing you on my, yeah, you finished this. All right, what's the hang up? Oh, I never got around to it. Ah, dude, this is going to suck for you. And I'd walk over to his platoon sergeant and say, hey, here's a list of everybody in your platoon that did not complete their training. And then I just walk away. And then leadership would take care of a leadership problem. All right. God, I miss the Marine Corps some days. All right. Now, same scenario. Hey, Agent Smuckatelli hasn't done her training. I'll get her on it. Can I hit her with a hose? Oh, no. Can we take her money? Well, no. Have I failed to properly express what it means to her to learn this information? I think so. Brokerage thinks so. A little fluffy agent. Oh, I completely understand why I need to do this. Bye. So, trying to figure out how to get this going. But, so, I'm ranting and raving at my karaoke party, as I'm wont to do, because that's my other therapist that I see out there. And we start trying to break down, well, maybe there's problems with your lesson plan. And we got in this big roundabout where the different styles of training. Okay, and the different styles of training when you don't have a stick. All right. If an agent is getting what they want out of real estate, all right, without the training, they will continue to do whatever the hell they want. All right, now you guys got to say, this is not specific to my brokerage. This is a universal problem. Every brokerage has this issue. We get a lot of agents out there who are coming to ProStar specifically for the training. They've been at this other brokerage for up to 2 years and has never gotten the hands-on kind of training we have. Right? So it's part of our value proposition. I'm part of this company's value proposition. And as this goes along, all right, and these particular agents who might be doing really, really good numbers and they think that the training they're going to get is just going to kick them into the next level. All right. Well, you still got to attend, kid. All right. But they get busy and they get wound up. And a lot of times they just want one-on-one training. What they don't want training. They want a call center. They want the list of frequently asked questions that they can just come and say, hey, what do I put down here? All right. This is, ironically enough, this popped up on Twitter this week. All right. And I bookmarked it so I could share it with you. Because this will include, oh my God. Let me just go ahead. This is called a Continuum of Understanding. It's sourced by a document called published by Cleveland publisher was Cleveland, 1982. Okay. This is the different arc of understanding, the continuum of understanding. All right. I'm going to apply this to real estate. All right. This is what I really wanted to talk about that I started 27 minutes ago. All right. So, and as you can see here, we got two axes, okay? This is your content, okay, and this is your understanding of said content, all right? Gathering of parts, connection of parts, formation of a whole, joining of the wholes. This is where it gets fun, okay? And then the understanding of side of the researching, the absorbing the knowledge, the doing, actual doing it, the interacting, and then the reflecting. This is wisdom. This is where people are considered wise, okay? This is Jon Snow territory. Jon Snow knows nothing. So, when you come into your brokerage, wet behind the ears, dreams of home and garden, television, and selling sunset in your head, or whatever it is, you should be about here, theoretically, between know nothing and know what, between the data and information. All right, you have absorbed, okay, at least enough to pass a test. And for those of you who forget, 90 credit hours, 90 actual class hours, and for God, I have no idea why they allow people to take that shit online. unattended, non-live, watch the frickin' video, answer the practice tests, whatever. All right. And you can pass the state test and the federal test. The federal test is going to cover some stuff that is nationwide, so we will never see that in Arizona, and that's the stuff that you memorize, pass the test, and then promptly forget, because we are not an attorney state, so we don't care about how they do things in Massachusetts. All right. And likewise, Massachusetts probably really doesn't care how big an acre is, because their lots aren't in acreage. All right, but still, this is where you need to be, all right, to find a broker who's willing to hire you on. And then you can legally, in the state of Arizona, be a sales agent. Go get them, kid. Oh, by the way, you got to pay everybody first, but then go get them, kid. And then getting to what to how. Okay. So you know nothing coming as a student. You know what bubble to fill in on the questionnaire. You know what thing, which one of the four answers to that particular question, all right, to click on. All right. And then you get to know how. Now, the only other knowing how training an agent gets, you're not taught how to use the MLS. You're not taught how to open up Superbox. You're not taught how to do a search, anything along these lines. All right. The only other training you get is you get a 3-hour contract class. 3 hours. All right. Now, you guys might be aware that I have a series of videos discussing how to do the contract from a consumer standpoint. All right. And I want to say I have like 6 segments. I think I did each section as its own little one. All right. It covers 3 hours on its own total airtime. You know what? Hold on for just a second. Research I should have done before. Okay, so I just checked, and so I did that series on it, and it was mostly focused towards the consumer. It wasn't focused towards the agent. All right, and my class takes 3 hours. All right, and honestly, just between you and me, it's consumer focused, okay, but I wrote it, I recorded it in mind of, can I put this in front of a new agent to give them that refresher? So it's a refresher. So, and it's also obsolete. It's at least one contract revision ago. I paid a third-party vendor to do a little bit of graphics on it at a certain expense to myself. And I would say, for every hour of video that I do, pretty much you need to calculate it's going to be another hour on the back end. All right, so as we're sitting here talking about this contract and just how long it took me to knock that out. All right. And Steve's saying, well, just send them the video, just send them the video and make them watch the video. I'm like, okay, what happens if they don't watch the video? All right. I can tell when they don't. And it's simple. YouTube lets me know. And he's like, well, you come up with a test and have them take a test afterwards. All right. How are they taking the test? How do we get the test in front of them? All of these things on it. All right. But that is still this level of knowledge. All right. Where our agents are screwing up is because they don't know the why of what they're putting down there. All right. This is what I'm trying somehow through this video, but through my training and everything, is trying to get people to understand this is the why you write it like this. This is the why that line is in there. Now, I'm not going to talk, maybe your consumers are different, but my consumers are highly sophisticated and intelligent people, meaning my clients are better than your clients, all right? Because they ask me smart questions. They ask me some dumb ones too. Usually the dumb ones are the ones that I've already told them, but they weren't listening because they were looking at Pretty Kitchens or whatever the hell it is, or looking at their phone, all right, on their social media page, whatever the issue is when we're talking, all right? But trying to develop a the actual wisdom, the why we write these contracts, the why it says that, right? There's an old saying, you learn the rules so you know which ones you can break and when to break them. And when you are in an industry where you think you are successful based on how much money you bring in, that's a hell of a way to judge whether or not you're successful. All right. I prefer to judge, like, are they still saying nice things about you after closing? All right. Have you never had to take some of that money that you bring in and then pay it back because you screwed up and you took a commissionectomy? All right. Different business styles and different educational styles. All right. Now, you can go through and do real estate at the know-how. Right, you'll be a better human being if you know why. Asterisk. Completely my opinion. Go find your own, but mine's better. All right, but and so that's the disconnect I'm having with people. I was talking to another instructor this week. This guy he's an airline pilot, but he's a flight instructor. All right, he's not your general. He's not the guy you're going to learn how to fly in with a Piper Cup. Okay, you're not getting in your Cessna 172 or 192 with him, all right, doing loops and touch and goes, all right, out at Deer Valley or Falcon Field. Okay, this is the guy that you come in, you've already passed. Let me show you where his students coming on the board are, all right? They've passed flight school, ground school, all right? They're qualified single engine, which means they can fly the Cessna 192, all right? They have visual flight rating, which means they can fly in the daytime with no bad weather. They have instrument flight rating, meaning that you could theoretically duct tape all of the windows and he'll be able to fly, or she will be able to fly the plane based solely on the screen in front of them. All right. And they're also qualified for dual engine, so they can have more than one engine on the plane. So these are the certifications you need just to walk in his classroom. And he was working for a flight school. And they started getting really negative feedback from their downstream customers. All right, their downstream customers, and the customer is the student, okay, but the students weren't getting value out of the product. I'm certified to fly a Boeing 737 because the pilots, the students' consumer, which was the airline industries, weren't hiring their students. And they weren't hiring their students, and they went out there and they interviewed with their students' consumers, their students' clients, their students' hopefully future employer, right? And these future employers were saying, you are training fair weather pilots. You live in Arizona, right, where the only real environmentals they need to learn to fly in is how much is your plane negatively affected in lift when it's 115 degrees. Fun fact, okay, the hotter the temperature, the less dense the air, the faster your plane needs to go to get lift over the wings to make that big chunk of metal be a bird. Right? And how does that affect flying up the Flagstaff? Okay, where you're going up in altitude and these kind of things. You do not get to learn how to fly into O'Hare in a snowstorm with a 25 knot crosswind gusting to 50. All right. With a half-mile visibility. Okay, so these students coming out of this school were not learning how to do that. Right? Negatively affected their school's reputation. Students, the school's customers, were not joining that school, not purchasing the product from the company, the training, okay, because your education is the product they're supposed to be selling you. Not the school experience. And so the students were going to other schools where they'd learn how to fly into O'Hare. And what was literally happening is that the first officer, which is, you'd be sitting there and you'd be, you got the seasoned captain here and you're the first officer and you were learning how to be the seasoned captain. And actually you were the second in command of this plane and you have adult supervision and you're suddenly laying up on O'Hare and the first officers are freaking out, screaming, running about, we're going to die, which is never a good thing to say when you're in charge. And so they were washing out. Hey, we can't have this guy taking off his seatbelt and running down the middle of the aisle when we're on approach, screaming, oh my God, we're all going to die. It freaks out the stewardesses. We're not even going to talk about Gladys and 7E over there. He has a fear of flying. So, and that perfectly encapsulates what I'm trying to say when I talk about the level of training that, people need to have when you're the voice of authority and they're paying you for your knowledge and experience. And this is the huge problem with my industry right now, right? The problem with my industry right now is these people down here filling out forms are screwing up transactions and damaging their clients and their clients' future, right? And they're allowed by the state of Arizona to do that. And they're allowed by their brokers who are okay if they wash out. Hey, I got 100 new agents forming up next week. All right. I know out of the 100 I'm going to get, 5 of them are going to be rock stars and pay for the other 95. Right. And that's not going to have any effect on us because of the way this industry works. People think it's always the agent that screwed up. And yeah, particularly it was that agent right there. But then the next step is they think all agents are like that. And all agents aren't. And I'm trying damn sure to make sure ProStar agents aren't. So what does this mean to you besides 41 minutes into and I feel a lot better because I got this off my chest. Thank you. I love you all. I've been seeing normal spring healthcare. Right. I am seeing every type of medical professional in various stages. Dealing, and because I got some veterans who are in the hospital again, I'm dealing with the different categories. If I hear that's not my job from another nurse, when I am talking about the needs of her patients, I will Luigi a hospital system. That has probably just flagged my account, and maybe this maybe this channel will not be this. Yeah, you might never see this video because that might have just gotten this video knocked out. All right, but still, that concept of the whole approach. Okay, people think healthcare professionals are uncaring because they don't care. Some of them do, but they probably get burned out really quick. All right. The very fact I have to sit there and try to explain to a person over the phone, I really need you to call that person and get them into this room and get them to do this. Well, that's their job. Exactly. And that's why you need to call them. I don't have their number and they won't talk to me about them because I don't have a medical power of attorney. Your client right now is concussed. All right. Read your patient. All right. Is concussed and will forget the conversation that we just had 5 minutes ago. All right. And you are currently costing him $600 a day that he needs to pay out of his retirement account because you can't take 5 minutes of your life and get George, the social worker, up there to make a phone call with him. All right. And you guys all wonder why nobody likes people in medicine right now. Right. So what this means to you is I want you to take this approach that I was telling you about. Whatever it is you do for a living. All right. For all you guys who want to make the world a better place and can't wait to go march on Washington for whatever freaking protest you think it is, or slap some bumper sticker on your car, or key somebody else's car because they have the wrong bumper sticker, or whatever, I'm going to say this unto you. Unfuck yourself first before you worry about what anybody else is doing. this level of understanding of whatever profession you want to be in, whatever profession you think you are going to be at, you need to know the why. You need to be wise about it. If you are frying hamburgers, all right, it would behoove you to know why some people order a hamburger well and some people order it medium rare. And you definitely want to know why. I don't care how good you think your system is. All right. Serving a rare hamburger is probably a bad idea. Unless you hand ground that and have complete control of that pipeline. Now, you as an employee of McDonald's really doesn't care, because when you give somebody food poisoning because of a half-assed fried burger, last time I worked at McDonald's, they idiot-proofed that thing. It wouldn't open until they were cooked. All right, but if you're sitting there flopping them over on Whataburger or something like that, and you actually have some semblance of control, you need to know these things. And I know you need to know these things because it's in the freaking, food handlers. All right, learn a little bit. All right, understand your craft. Whatever your craft might be. Okay, somebody said a long time ago, I really wish I could remember who said this. All right, if you ever find yourself working in a whorehouse, you need to work at being the best whore in the house. All right. So, be better, people. We can do this. We can make everything great again. So, and that pretty much wraps up this and all my first time. Anybody who stayed around for 46 minutes, this is actually a long one for me lately. All right, repeat after me. We are going to watch our children and pets around water. Okay, we are not going to drive into anything flooded. We are going to work our circles and not care about what's happening in other continents. We are going to once again focus on things we can actually have an impact on. All right, by working on our mental state, being physically healthy, okay, making sure your family and friends like you and that you have good relationships with them. And when you do hit the next circle out where you have to start dealing with other people that you work with, you are going to be the go-to person, because you're not just going to know how to do something, you're going to know why to do something, and you're going to be an exceptional person. And I ran out of drive space in the last 30 seconds of my rant. All right, so once again, work circles, this, that, and the other thing, and I want you guys to have a great weekend. That's all I wanted to say. I wanted to wish you to have a great weekend. So now you get an extra 20 seconds of me telling, have a great weekend. I'll talk to you guys later.